Good evening. I want to thank the commission, um, Dr. Ski, who's a friend in my head, he doesn't know it, and all of you for inviting me here to speak to you. What he didn't mention is I was blessed to be honored by Oprah Winfrey on her show in 2007, in which she also generously paid off all of my med school debt. Yeah, paid Oprah. Um, it totaled over $200,000 was paid off. Since I was on the show, I've received, I go around and I do some speaking on just motivational speaking, talking to students, talking to people that came from where I came from. And every time I receive one of these invitations, I am truly humbled and truly honored, and I want you to know how excited I am to be here, especially here at this commission for community colleges, because as Ski told you, I started at a community college. And I look back, I started 24 years ago, was my first class at HACC. And I think then, if someone had told me 24 years ago when I walked into that first classroom, that at some point I would be standing here talking to you, that I would be traveling the country, that I would have went to Africa and did 2 medical missions, that I'd have went to medical school, that I would have been on the Oprah show, I would have thought they were crazy. And we were talking earlier about where we've come from. We both came from community colleges. And sometimes you need someone to guide you, and why it's so important to then reach back and talk to people. And I also reach back sometimes and I think to myself, what would I have told that 20-something-year-old woman who started at HACC? What advice would I have given her? So while I want to share with you guys my story a little bit, mainly in the hopes that by the end of my story, you will accept that maybe I do have a right to give you a little bit of advice. And I want to then tell you some of the things that I look back and say, what I know now, and hopefully can leave you with just a couple of those things. As Ski told you, I was born and raised in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I grew up in Hall Manor, just down 13th Street. If anyone that's from Harrisburg knows, that's one of the public housing projects. My mother, after my father and she divorced, she was a single mother of 5 children herself. And so we ended up moving from a middle-class home into the housing projects. When the rigors of raising 5 really rambunctious girls became a little too much, my mother put us in a home for a little while. And I lived at Sylvan Heights Home. For many of you around here will know that as the YWCA, the big white mansion up there off of Market Street. But back when I was growing up and when I lived there, it was a home. I lived there for about 1.5 years before returning back to my mother. As he said, I always wanted to be a physician. I watched the physicians when they took care of my grandmother, and I thought, that's what I want to be. However, I got pregnant at 16. And although I completed school, my daughter is now, and don't anybody try to do the math, but my daughter is now 35. 35 years ago, you didn't just pick up and go away to college when you had a child. So at that point, I realized I couldn't go to college, so I did finish my education. I finished high school, and I started working full-time. I had 4 more children. If anyone sees the Oprah clip, you'll see that they say that I got married and had 4 more children. I'm here to tell you I had 4 more children, and then I got married. I had 5 children. This was my high school sweetheart. We got married. I had no idea at that time. We were young, we were playing marriage. I thought that a marriage meant I needed to ask him permission. I didn't do anything without asking him permission. So just to give you a little background, even though I didn't go to college, I wanted my children to go. So I always instilled in them how important it was for them to get good grades. You got to go to college. And my daughter looked at me one day and wanted to know what college I went to. Because of course, clearly I went to college. And I realized then that I was just a hypocrite. How can I keep telling my children how important it was when I never stepped foot in college? So I kept asking him, can I just go down to HACC and take a class? I just want to take 1 class. I just want to see what it's like. Year after year, he kept saying, we can't do it. We don't have the money. We're working full-time. We got 5 kids. There's no way you can take any classes. I realized after a while there was no way he was ever going to tell me that it was okay to go. So I did it behind his back. I drove on down Cameron Street and I applied. I took my entrance exams. I applied. I got my financial aid. I got my books, and I stuck them in my trunk. I was too afraid to even let him know I was going to college. I didn't tell him till the night before that I had already arranged for babysitters and that when I got off of work the next day, I was going to head on down and go and take a class. Our marriage was a little rocky then, and that was like the last straw for him. I think he thought that if we argued every night, I would give it up because I didn't have time to study. But he had no idea how excited I was when I finally sat in a desk in college. If you've been denied the opportunity to go, if you know anyone who wants to go and can't go, you will never know how exciting that is just to sit there. I got there early. I had my book bag. I had my books. I was ready. So that semester, we actually separated. And I think that was also part of a power play. There's no way, if she's single and working full-time, she can go and do this college thing. But again, he underestimated the power of going down to HACC. I did complete HACC, and I went on down to York. I started working as a nurse because, of course, I can't be a doctor. I got 5 kids. But the closest thing I could do was become a nurse. So I got my associate's degree in nursing from HACC, and then I went down to York for my bachelor's degree. But I never stopped wanting to be a doctor. It just kept nagging me. And I think it got worse when I was working next to physicians, and I kept thinking that was supposed to be my life. That was supposed to be me. So I started finally nagging me, and I thought, I just want to see. So I started taking some of the classes, and I started trying to imagine what it would be like if I became a physician. I started taking a few classes. I went to the admissions counselor down at York, one of the counselors at York, and I said, what do I need to do? What classes do I need to take to get into medical school? And she looked at me, and although I had great grades from HACC and good grades there, and I guess with my age, she just didn't think this made any sense. So she never told me about the pre-med group. She never told me any of that. She said, well, you have to take this MCAT, and you should take physics and organic chemistry, and she wrote it on a yellow sticky, which I've kept to this day. So I went home. So I took this yellow sticky, and I said, well, let me just Google. I had no idea what an MCAT was. I had to Google it to see what it was. And I basically put in how to apply for medical school in my Google, and I started researching myself. And I started taking the classes. Now, I'm working full-time as a nurse now over at Camp Hill Prison. I had to be to work at 7. I'd work full-time. I'd drive down to York, take some classes. In between classes, I would go out in my car and take a nap. I'd have my daughter call me on my phone to wake me up for the next class. I'd go back and take my next class, go home, drive home to Harrisburg, check my children's homework, get their clothes out for the next day, and then I could study. And then I would sit and study for the next day, and then I would get up and do it again the next day. And I got to the point where it was time now to take my MCATs. I had done all my well, let me just back up. As I'm taking classes, all the other nurses are asking me, and people, why are you taking physics? Why are you taking organic chemistry? And I'm trying to convince them that I'm taking it just for fun. Because I want to see what it's like, because I did not have the confidence to tell anyone that with 5 kids and at my age, I wanted to be a doctor. So I couldn't tell anybody, so I kept it secret. I didn't tell anyone until I needed to switch a shift with one of the nurses to actually take this MCAT thing. She was so excited that by the time I got back on Monday, she had told everyone what I was doing. But when I came in, all the physicians and the PAs, they came up to me and they said, why didn't you tell us? You should have told me that's what you were doing. You wasted all that time. You're too old to get into medical school. They're never going to accept you into medical school. Why don't I help you? I'll write you a letter of recommendation. You'll get into a great PA school. And I left that day thinking, well, why didn't I tell anybody? Why did I waste all this time? I should have confided into someone that knew better than me. I should have trusted someone other than Google on how I was going to get into medical school. And as I was Googling, I also came across a summer program that was aimed at helping minority and disadvantaged people getting into medical school. It's a 6-week program sponsored by the AAMC, Association of American Medical Colleges. And so I applied to this program. They had several sites across the country, and one was Yale. And I thought, I'm never going to get into Yale again, but I can go there for this summer program. So I applied to that summer program and got in. And I know that no one raised their hand that they wanted to be a doctor, but maybe on the chance that someone really does, but you were like me and didn't want to tell anybody, please come see me. I'd love to share information on this 6-week program. It's free. They pay you a stipend, and they give you money to try to get there. All right. So I went up to Yale. I did the summer program, and while I was up there, again, I'm excited to be at Yale. I'm older than most of the people in this program were old enough to be my children, and I was just excited. I was there every day. I was in class early. I loved it. So word got around about this older woman who was in class and how well I was doing, and they called me in and said, "Did you think about applying here?" I never would have thought about applying to Yale. But because I was there and they saw my abilities, they encouraged me to apply, and I got in. Well, I got to apply, but what I found out was that I actually needed a letter of recommendation from the pre-med committee. If you remember, I was never in the pre-med group because they never thought I was, this counselor never thought that I had what it took. So now I'm ready, I'm making my applications, and I'm stuck now because I don't have a letter from the committee. And if you have a committee at your school, you must have this letter. I found out that my organic chemistry teacher was on the committee. So I went to her one day, I said, I know I wasn't in pre-med, but I want to go to medical school. Would you be willing to write me a letter? And she said, yeah. I gave her I said, well, here's a little bit about me so that you can make it personal. When I came back the next day, she said, I never knew you had 5 kids. I never knew you were working a full-time job. So I don't know if there's any teachers here, but I thought she picked on me. I thought this woman hated me. Every time I went there, she was calling on me with a question. She said, you don't realize, as a teacher, we make a point. If I want to draw something out, I'll call on someone that doesn't really know the answer because I want to draw it out. But if I just want to get the answer, I'll call on one of my students that I know is going to have it. She said, you were that student I called on. So in those stories, there's a couple things, the things I wish I had known. One, when people tell you what you can't do, the only thing they're telling you is what they can't do. It has nothing to do with your dream. So don't let them put a limitation on what you can do. Right. Another thing is you never know who's watching you. My mama used to always tell me, you never dress for the job you have, you dress for the one you want, right? Your mama told you that too, y'all know that. So it's always about, I always tell my kids, be about your business, and your business is you. Every day, be about your business. You never know who's watching you. I'm sure you guys are here because someone was watching you. Someone saw what you were doing. Someone recommended you. And that will carry on throughout the rest of your life. Continue to be about your business. Continue to project yourself in a way that when people think of, we need someone on a committee, we need someone for this job, that you instantly come to mind. Always think, as he said, I got into Yale. I got into an anesthesia program, and I completed my program up at Boston and became an anesthesiologist. And the way it works is you complete medical school, you finish residency, then you start practicing, and then you want to become board certified in your specialty. For anesthesia, we have to have a written board, and then we also have to have an oral board where you go in front of a panel of people who grill you and make sure that you know everything there is to know about anesthesia. So I took a month off after residency so I can study for that written board. And I studied day and night, just like I've done my entire life. Something that's worked for me from the beginning. I studied, and I studied, and I failed. And I got that thing, and I was devastated. I had never failed at anything in my life. And not only did I fail, but I had to go tell my boss that I did not pass that written exam. I got up the courage to tell him, but in addition to that, while everyone's celebrating on Facebook, I got on and I told him, congratulations, but I failed. You see, there's no shame. It may hurt, but there's no shame in failing when you've done your best. there's actually a lot of power in failure. It wasn't until I failed at something that I really realized how strong I was. When you have to fail, when you fall, when you pick yourself and you dust yourself off and you say, I am still standing, then you know that it is okay, and I don't have any problem stepping out now because I don't worry about failing at anything. So the one thing I wish I had known back when I first walked into to HACC at that time is, don't worry about failing. Do your best, give your all, and then when you fail, figure out what you did wrong and move forward. See, what I did wrong is I could tell you everything about anesthesia. I could tell you if I went into that elevator with an oxygen tank and it only had so much PSI in there, I could tell you how long I can give this patient oxygen. I could tell you what the vapor pressure of desflurane was in Denver. But those weren't the questions they were asking me. So it didn't matter that I studied a month, I was studying wrong. So sometimes it's not what you're doing, it's that you're doing it wrong. So be willing to step back and see what you did and then regroup, readjust your sails and move forward. I got my written boards, passed my oral boards in October of 2013. In November, I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis. Now, before maybe a month ago, no one knew what myasthenia gravis was. It's similar to ALS, but not as deadly. So the more I do things, the weaker I get. So I passed my oral boards, became fully board certified in October, got diagnosed in November, and I was off in the hospital in December. After 24 years of finally reaching my goal, I ended up in the hospital with a disease that won't let me currently work. But what I've learned from failure and things is that life can knock me down, but it can't keep me down. So while I am readjusting my sails and as I'm getting stronger and deciding where I'm going from here, I want you to remember also, life can knock you down, but it's up to you whether you stay there. So I know you guys want to get on to eating. I want to tell you that one of my favorite quotes is from Nelson Mandela. When someone asked him how he endured all he endured, how did he have the courage to do so much? And he says, courage is not the absence of fear. It's inspiring others to move past it. So I'm hoping that tonight I was able to help you possibly move past your fears, to find the strength and the power in your failure, to get back up when life knocks you down, to never, most importantly, ever let anyone set limitations on your goals and your dreams. Thank you.
Outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. So motivational.